This is Leadership is Changing Podcast, episode 12.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
Hey, welcome to the show, Leadership is Changing. What we as leaders know to be true is that change is constant. Leaders everywhere confront similar obstacles because people are people. But everywhere you go, leaders are overwhelmed, disrupted, and under pressure. They run from email to email, meeting to meeting. Many leaders are not changing quick enough, which means they run the risk of becoming irrelevant and being left behind. The purpose of the show is taking our listeners' leadership to another level by finding their balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. I believe we don't have enough effective leaders in the world today, and if we can get the leaders to step up and lead change, then they can inspire real change. It is now time to adapt in our fast-moving world. Listeners, hey, welcome to episode Ask Denis. And it's a pleasure to be with you again, and thanks for joining. So these episodes of Ask Denis, which is more of a freestyle session, happens every week, and I will have a question come through, or I will share some value, insights, teaching, stories, experiences with you in relation to Leadership is Changing. This week, I've got a question that's come through from a guy called Andrew, and Andrew, thanks for sending through your question. With half the year now completed, what do you recommend leaders focus on the second half of 2020, especially with COVID-19 in mind? Andrew, that's an awesome question that you're asking. And, you know, I really want to step people through this because I think it's something that we're all facing right now, especially with Leadership is Changing. Change is always constant, as we say. But you know what? We've had a layer of COVID-19 hit us all around the world as well. And so, yes, you know, we're into July. And so the first 6 months of the year is gone. And boy, what a amazing sort of 6 months that's been. It's sort of been really out there. It's really thrown us into the chaos, unfamiliar territory, into the unknown. And this pandemic has hit us, and a few other things as well hitting people. I'm sure every single person around the world have different circumstances. People losing roles, jobs, businesses. Others having their businesses locked down and they're now trying to get back and bounce back. People working from home and then struggling to do that, now transitioning back into some of the other areas as well. And so Andrew's got a fantastic question that he's just asked. And so here we go. Team, the very first thing I would say to you is mindset. And that is in the first half of the year and in the second half, what has your mindset been? And for a lot of people, it could be quite difficult. You know, it's easy to talk about things, but not always easy to do and put into action and put in place. And so, first of all, I would say around the mindset is acknowledge that we have COVID-19 and it's here, and things are different from what they've been. And we've had to stretch, we've had to move, we've had to go to places where we haven't been before, in the sense the way we work, the way we handle things, and we've all been stretched and taken out of our comfort zone. And so, there is something whereby it's happened to us and it's out of our control. But there are two things that are in our control. One is our attitude, in other words, the way we react to things. And number two is where we are going next. And so for all of us, we've had to look at our attitudes and we've had to look in the mirror and say, what's going on here, and dig deep. And some have had to dig deep, even, you know, a lot more deeper than others to sort of move along and move forward. And so it's not easy and it's not over. There is countries around the world that are getting slammed and getting bigger and bigger numbers every single day. There are other countries that have come through it and have gone hard and they've locked down and they've gone and done the hard yards to help things through, but they still aren't clear either. And because a lot of them, their borders are closed right now, so no travel internationally. And some people do travel, then they have to go into isolation. So if they travel to one country to go into isolation, they travel back to their own country, they have to go into isolation. So 2 weeks one place and 2 weeks another place, it's a whole month in isolation if some people do travel. Travel is starting to happen in some countries with internal domestic travel is happening for them. So our attitude, how do we react to things? And number two, where we are going next. The other thing I would say around your mindset is, the mindset is, what are our thoughts? What are we thinking about each day and each night? What are we going through in our thinking process? In fact, are some people even thinking? Because some people are in the fight-flight mode. They're in they're just in panic mode. They're in don't know what to do. Where should we go next? They are struggling. And I would say to you is step back and stop. You need to do some thinking here and start thinking. And what I encourage some of my customers to do and people I coach around the world is to get some paper or a sketchbook and actually just start brainstorming, putting things down on paper and start to think through things and where you are. The other thing would be to be looking after yourself. Look after yourself in the sense of put your mask on first before you help anyone else. And we've heard that on all airlines. And the unlikely event, your mask drops down in front of you. Put your mask on first before you help anyone else. And we know that means that if we don't get oxygen, if we don't look after ourselves first, then we are useless to anyone else. We won't be able to help others. And so, leaders, I'm going to say to you now, for a lot of you, you forgot to look after yourself as we went into transition of lockdown. You looked after your teams, you looked after your businesses, you looked after your spouse, your partner, your family. But for a lot of leaders, they forgot to look after themselves. And so I'm going to encourage you, as we go further in lockdown, or if your country's coming out of lockdown and you're transitioning back into the office space, back into your business, look after yourself. You're going to need to really do that. One way to be able to do that, of course, is the well-being side of things. Exercise, getting out, walking at least, going to a gym, going for a run, biking, whatever you need to do that every day. Number two is nutrition. Watch what you're eating. For a lot of people who have been in lockdown, in some countries they've had no takeaways, they've had no restaurants open, so they've had to go and cook more than they have been in the past. And so the nutrition has been amazing. The third thing I would say in that space for the well-being is around water. Make sure you're drinking lots and lots and lots of water, because it's going to help with the brain side of things and helping you with your thinking as you're doing the brainstorming. And it's also going to help you flush things from your body to enable you to move forward and operate at a different level, which is interesting. So as I said, each country is at a different stage of lockdown. People are working from home. And for some of those people, they are struggling with the transition, going from the bedroom into their office, back into the bedroom with family life, the lounge, whatever. But for a lot of them, they are actually still working at 8 o'clock at night, and so they still struggle there. The other thing would be is that some businesses are closed. They're in the lockdown as well. And so for them, they still have to pay rent, and for some of them, they're still struggling. And then the other one is that as they come out of lockdown, people are going back into work, and for some, they are already starting to struggle with the transition back into the office. In fact, they are emotionally tired and they're finding it difficult. But I'm going to just say to you, check your mindset. Just check where you are with things. Make sure you're looking after yourself first, because that's the number one thing that you need to do to help set you up for the second half of 2020. Definitely that. Number two, the next biggest thing would be to reflect on the first 6 months. Yeah, you could say 3 months of that it was the COVID-19 and pandemic from March onwards, but you still need to reflect, because for a lot of you, you did certain things in that lockdown. You may have gone and done, created stuff for your business. You may have created new products. You may have created a new business, invented things. For others, you thought about life and you thought about where you're going next. And so it's a great time at the halfway mark of the year to reflect on certain things, and here they are. Number one, what went well for you in the first half of the year? Number two, what would you have done, or what could you have done better in the first half of the year? And number three, what will you do differently now going forward? So 3 questions. What went well? What could you have done better? And what will you do differently now going forward? If you can take time out to stop and reflect, think about things, understand what insights came up for you, what learnings, what patterns are you noticing. A lot of that is going to help you with your reflection, but also help set up the second half of the year. The next big thing, so this is point number 3 now. So number 1 was mindset. Number 2 was reflect on the first half of the year. The next big thing will be for you to Take those learnings from the reflection. Take the things that you've been thinking about in the mindset and what you need to do to look after yourself and get into a thinking mode, but maybe even into a more positive thinking area. And that is, the third thing would be now to start thinking about setting some goals for 2020. Yep, I know. For some of you in lockdown and for some of you, you're already back into it. That's great. But set some goals for the next 6 months. How are you going to bring 2020 forward in the sense that are you going to succeed? So think about that, right? So what are you going to do for the next sort of 6 months? And so the question I've got some areas for you to think about. So what are you going to do to move you forward and your business and your team and your organization, depending on what you're working on? The next thing would be get clear on what you want. Get clear on what you want to achieve. And I would focus on 3 areas if you can, 3 major goals. Now, these goals may be in different areas of your life, business, leadership roles, whatever it is for you. Focus on 3 main goals. That doesn't mean you can't do more goals, because once you get those 3 done, or at least one of them done, you can bring another one in. But I get you to focus on 3, because if you can focus on 3, then you can handle that more than anything. Where you find leaders or people in business where they set goals, they set so many goals that they end up achieving nothing. And that is because they're spinning too many plates. So the important thing here for you is to try and focus on 3 goals. Now, if you need to go to 5, go to 5, but 3 goals if you can, 3 major goals. Get clear on what you want in those goals. Understand where you are today in relation to those goals. So where you want to go, so that's the end picture in mind, those 3 main goals. Number 2 is, where are you today? And, and the thing would be then to say, okay, this is where I am today. This is my current state. This is where I am. This is how things are for me right now. Do a little bit of a snapshot, a little bit of a analysis on you in relation to those goals that you want to work for or work towards. The next thing I would say is that you need to put in place is to think about what you want to put in place as an action plan, or certain things and resources you might need to put in place to help you succeed on those goals. Alrighty, so the big thing here would be to set 3 major goals for you in the next 6 months. And if you can achieve one, then go and set another goal. So then you've always got 3 goals on the go. But what are the 3 main goals that you want to get done in the next or the second half of the year? And of those areas, then think about clearly what are those, what do you want to achieve? In other words, the end goal in mind. Understand where you are today, in other words, the current state, do an analysis where you are with things in relation to those goals. And then what you need to do and what you need to put in place to help you succeed. What action plans do you need to put in place? What resources do you need to put in place? And start thinking about that. The fourth main area will be, again, so let's just recap, right? So number 1 was around the mindset and acknowledging COVID-19. Number 2 was reflect on the first half and see what you learned, lessons, patterns, and so forth, insights. The third one was around setting some big goals, 3 main goals for you to focus on. And then the fourth thing for you is to take massive action. Do what you need to do to make this happen, whatever those goals are. Do what you need to do. This podcast, if I take it as an example, a year ago I wanted to launch, and so just kept putting it off. And there was a couple of reasons why I needed to hold off for a little while. But then it came time that I wanted to do this podcast, and I could have left it for another month or 2, but I decided that I had to go. I just had to make it happen. And I put things in place real quick. And then it was amazing. As soon as I set that goal and the date and when I wanted to go live, I watched things happen. Things happened around me, and it was amazing. It was almost like everything fell into place. The dominoes fell one after the other. It was really amazing to see and fascinating to be part of that journey and watch it unfold. And so as I did that, set the goal, was I nervous? Yeah. Was I scared? Yes. But while at the same time being really, really excited. So I'm like a kid in a candy store, if I can put it that way at the moment. This podcast, this is into week 3 now. has just really been fantastic in the way to see it happen. Now, what happened if I didn't set that goal and then took the massive action to put it in place? I could still be thinking about it right now. But the other thing that is really important is that the listeners wouldn't be actually getting this information from my guests that I interview, along with their insights, their stories, their experiences, along with the stuff that I'm sharing on Ask Dennis, based on the questions that are coming through, based on some of the insights and stories and my experiences over the years and working with executives and leaders across the world. So really important that team that you take massive action. You might surprise yourself on what you can achieve. So do what you need to do to make it happen. And that also includes whatever is thrown at you, because as you set the goal and as you take massive action, yes, things do fall into place. However, things will also get thrown at you. There'll be curveballs being thrown at you. But you know what? When you have that goal and you have a deadline and you understand where you're going to go, it doesn't matter what's thrown at you, it bounces off. And I had some curveballs thrown at me, but they bounced off and I just kept going. And so you need to be resilient throughout that time when things have been thrown at you. You need to adapt fast. You need to think fast. So if you can be resilient, adapt fast, and think fast, you can actually avoid or let those curveballs that have been thrown at you bounce straight off you while you're still going ahead. And so ensure that you've got that. The other thing I would say around the massive action piece is this. Ensure that you have the right people around you to support you. Now, for some of you, and I know I ask a lot of leaders this question, do you have the right people around you? And I keep getting told, yes, I do. Yeah, I have. But then within a couple of months, 3 months, 4, 5, 6 months, it becomes very evident that they don't. And so I'm going to ask you this. Do you have the right people around you to support you in the second half of this year to help you bring these goals together? So in the fourth area, the big area is take massive action. Do what you can do to make things happen. Whatever is thrown at you, be resilient, adapt fast, think fast, but also make sure you've got the right people around you to support you as you move forward. So I'm going to do a summary here, listeners, and it's going to be around what we've covered today. So Andrew asked a great question, and that is, with the half year now completed, so the first half of 2020 now completed, what do you recommend leaders focus on in the second half of 2020, especially with COVID-19 taken into consideration? So when you take COVID-19 into consideration, you know you've got the second half of the year. The areas that I covered are your mindset, in other words, you know, where you are, how you're thinking, but also acknowledge where you are with COVID-19. Number 2, step back and reflect on your first 6 months, your learnings, your insights, and see what patterns you may have coming through as well. Number 3, set big goals in what you want to achieve. Focus on 3 major goals and go for it. Don't let this COVID-19 pandemic actually stop you from doing things. I'm working with people at the moment who are doing amazing things. They're going out of their comfort zone big time. And when you're out of your comfort zone, that's where the magic happens. And so these people are actually putting things in place and they are doing things. And it's great to see them get out of their comfort zone and step forward, knowing that they are nervous, knowing that they are scared, knowing that they don't know and have that ambiguity, they're not sure what's going to happen, but they're just believing in themselves. They are backing themselves. I'm backing them. I'm behind them as their coach, as the person who's helping them, to help them understand where they can go and where they need to get, and what they need to put in place to help them go forward, and then holding them accountable while also supporting them, while also challenging them and their thinking. And it's amazing to see the results they're starting to get already. You see, with massive action is the next thing. And getting the right people around you is really, really important. Because if you have those right people around you, the right team, they're the ones who are going to lift you. They're the ones who are going to hold you. They're the ones who are going to pull you back up again and say, keep going, keep focused. So ensure you've got those people around you. Because you see, team, you can bring 2020 home strong and set not only 2020 up for success in the remaining second half of the year, even though we've got some real trying times ahead of us, but also those who are going to do things now, those who start putting things in place now, who do those things that I talked about, and along with massive action, they are the people who are setting up 2021 and onwards for success. What you do today is what's going to set you up for the years ahead. And so be very clear on what you want to do. Think about it and go for it. If there's anything I can do to support you, help you, hold you accountable, challenge you in whatever you want to do, in fact, just to sit there and listen, then feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to do that. Hey, Andrew, thanks for sending through that question for us today. An awesome question, because for a lot of us, we are going through that with COVID-19. Listeners, great having you on the call today, and thanks for joining us. What we as leaders know to be true is that change is constant. Change is incredibly scary, especially with the unknown and the unfamiliar territory. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing. Look out for the episodes as they're being released. Please download, listen, subscribe, put a review and a rating. And if there's any feedback or any questions you may have that you want to ask me, or any feedback you want to give to me on the show about the show, or if there is a question you have for Ask Denis episode, please feel free to send that to me in an email, dennis@leadingchangepartners.com, or send me a private message on social media, or go to my website, leadingchangepartners.com, and go into the contact form and leave me a message. More than happy to hear things from you. Love to get your questions. And I've been loving seeing all these questions come through from people. But also, thanks to those who are giving me those comments and feedback on the show. It's been brilliant to hear and see. And so thank you very much, team. And please go out and share this with your network, and thoroughly enjoying what I'm doing. So trusting it is adding value to you and to your organizations. Team, thanks for joining today on this episode of Ask Denis and Leadership is Changing. It's my pleasure. My name is Denis Gianoutsos, and thanks for joining. And we'll talk to you again very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.